The night was cold, and the rain had turned the streets into silver veins under the glow of the streetlights. Ryan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other clutching his phone, waiting for a reply that never came. His girlfriend, Emily, hadn't answered a single call or text since yesterday. They'd fought, nothing serious, just about her strange late-night disappearances. But something about the way she looked at him before walking away had chilled him. It wasn't anger. It was empty. When he finally pulled up to her apartment building, the lights inside her unit were off, but her car was still in the parking lot. He rang the doorbell. No answer. He knocked. Still nothing. A nervous laugh escaped him as he fished out the spare key she'd given him months ago. The moment he turned the lock, a draft swept past his face, carrying a faint, metallic smell. Inside, the apartment looked normal, too normal. The air felt heavy, almost charged. Emily's phone sat on the kitchen counter, the screen cracked, as if someone had thrown it. Ryan called out her name again and again, his voice echoing through the still rooms. When he reached the bedroom, he froze. There were muddy footprints, bare, small ones, leading from the window to the bed. The sheets were messy, twisted, and stained faintly dark in patches he didn't want to inspect closely. Then came the sound, soft, rhythmic tapping, from inside the closet. Ryan's pulse spiked. "Emily," he whispered, inching toward it. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the room like a held breath. Then, slowly, the closet door creaked open an inch by itself. Ryan swallowed hard and reached out. His hand trembled as he pulled the door wider, and his breath caught in his throat. Hanging inside were Emily's clothes, all perfectly arranged, but her favorite red dress was still damp, dripping water onto the floor. And behind the row of hanging clothes, something moved. A pale hand slid out, gripping the edge of the door. Ryan stumbled back, his heart hammering. The figure stepped out, it was Emily. But her skin was pale gray, her eyes wide and glassy like she hadn't slept, or breathed, for days. Her voice came out low and hollow. "You shouldn't have come here, Ryan." He froze, unable to speak, his mind refusing to process what he was seeing. Her wet hair clung to her face, and water kept dripping from her fingertips, forming a puddle on the carpet. "Emily, what happened to you?" he whispered. She tilted her head, a sad smile forming on her lips. "I tried to tell you," she said softly. "But now it's too late for both of us." The lights flickered once. Then they went out completely. A whisper slid through the darkness, her voice, close to his ear now. "You promised you'd never leave me, remember?" And before he could even move, cold hands wrapped around his neck. When the lights died, Ryan's world vanished into darkness. His breath hitched as he stumbled backward, hands clawing at the air. The room smelled of wet earth and decay, and the sound of dripping water echoed louder, closer. "Emily," he whispered, voice cracking. He could still feel her presence, too close, too real. Something brushed past his shoulder. He flinched and fumbled for his phone, the screen's glow weak but enough to cut through the shadows. The light caught her face for a split second, pale skin, eyes black like ink, mouth half open as if gasping for air. Then she was gone, the phone slipping from his shaking hand. He grabbed the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. It was ice cold, locked tight from the inside. "No, no, no," he hissed, slamming his fist against it. A whisper floated from behind him again, soft but unmistakable. "You said forever, Ryan." He spun around. Emily stood in the doorway to the bathroom now, her head tilted in that strange, unnatural way, her hair dripping steadily onto the floor. The puddle beneath her was growing, dark, murky water spreading toward him. Her reflection shimmered in the hallway mirror, but in the reflection, she wasn't standing still. She was smiling, grinning too wide, showing too many teeth. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to run. He bolted toward the kitchen, tripping over something wet and soft. When he looked down, his blood ran cold. It was a photo album, Emily's. Every page was soaked through, the pictures warped, faces smudged except for hers. In every photo, her eyes seemed to be looking directly at him, even when she wasn't facing the camera. He grabbed a knife from the counter, heart hammering so hard it hurt. "Stay away from me," he shouted. But Emily's voice came from everywhere at once. "Why are you afraid? You said you loved me." The overhead light flickered once more, and when it steadied, she was standing inches from him. Her lips quivered as water poured from her mouth, streaming down her chin like tears. "You didn't keep your promise, Ryan. You left me in the lake." The words froze him. His mind flashed back, 3 months ago, the night of the storm, the argument near the old bridge, the slip, the splash. He'd screamed her name, searched for her in the water, but she'd never resurfaced. They'd called it an accident. He tried to convince himself it was. But now, standing in her kitchen, staring at what she'd become, he knew she had found her way back. Ryan dropped the knife. His voice broke. "Emily. I didn't mean." Her eyes glowed faintly blue, her voice a whisper that seemed to come from inside his skull. "You promised you'd never let go." The temperature dropped sharply, frost forming on the windows. He gasped as cold hands wrapped around his wrists, pulling him backward toward the hallway. And then, through the static hum of his phone on the floor, came a faint sound, her voicemail playing on repeat. "Ryan, please don't leave me." Ryan's lungs burned as he fought to pull free from the icy grip. He yanked his hands back, stumbling toward the living room. The floor felt slick under his shoes, cold water pooling everywhere. The apartment's walls groaned as if the building itself were breathing. The air was dense, suffocating, and the faint smell of lake water hung heavy around him. He snatched his phone off the floor and flicked on the flashlight. The beam flickered weakly, casting distorted shadows that seemed to stretch and crawl. Emily was gone, but her wet footprints led to the hallway door. He hesitated only for a moment before bolting toward it. When he swung it open, his heart plummeted. The familiar hallway of the apartment building was gone. In its place stretched a narrow corridor that looked old, rotted, dripping with moisture. The wallpaper peeled in long strips, and the ceiling light buzzed dimly, casting everything in a sickly yellow hue. "Emily," he called, voice trembling. No answer, only the sound of water dripping, steady as a heartbeat. He started walking, slow, each step echoing too loudly. The further he went, the longer the hallway became. He glanced back once, his stomach twisted. The door to the apartment had vanished. "Okay," he muttered under his breath, his voice cracking, "this isn't real. This can't be real." Then he saw it, a flicker of red at the end of the corridor. Her dress. Emily was standing with her back to him, her head bowed. Her wet hair clung to her neck as she whispered something he couldn't understand. He took a hesitant step forward, and her whispering stopped. "Emily, please," he said, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for that night to happen." Slowly, she turned her head, not her body, just her head, and the motion was wrong, too slow, too deliberate. Her mouth curled into a faint smile. "You let me drown," she said softly. The lights flickered violently, and the walls began to ripple like the surface of water. The hallway shifted, bending and stretching. He could hear rushing water now, distant but growing louder, like a river roaring underground. Panic set in. He ran. Doors appeared along the corridor, each one different. One was covered in mold, another was rusted shut, another had a handprint smeared in something dark. He grabbed one handle and yanked. It opened. Inside was a reflection of the bridge, the same one where she'd fallen. Rain poured in heavy sheets, the water below black and endless. He stepped back, shaking his head. No, this isn't real. But as he turned, Emily was there again, blocking the path. Her eyes were hollow, her soaked dress clinging to her thin frame. "You left me," she whispered. "Now I'll never leave you." She lunged. Her body slammed into his, and the world tilted. He felt cold water close around him, pulling him under. He thrashed, gasping, choking, screaming her name. And then, darkness. Ryan woke up lying on a wet floor, coughing up water. He was back in her apartment. But the clock on the wall read 3 a.m., the same time she had died. The second hand wasn't ticking. Then, from behind him, a voice whispered gently, right against his ear. "You're starting to remember." Ryan froze, his breath catching as the voice echoed in his ear. "You're starting to remember." The word slithered through the dark like a whisper from inside his own mind. He spun around, but no one was there. Only the faint reflection of himself in the cracked mirror by the wall, though even that looked wrong. His reflection's eyes were slightly off, its mouth curved upward in a faint grin while his own face trembled in fear. He stumbled back, knocking over a lamp that flickered to life for a split second before dying again. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of algae and mud. Ryan clutched his chest, trying to steady his heartbeat. "This isn't happening," he muttered. "It's just a nightmare." But then, the mirror rippled like water. His reflection began to change, morphing into Emily, her face pale, lips blue, eyes open wide. She stared at him through the glass. "You remember the bridge, don't you?" she said, her voice muffled but clear. "You remember letting go?" Ryan's hands shook violently. Images flashed in his mind, Emily slipping on the wet railing, his hand reaching out too late, her scream swallowed by the roar of the storm. He had gone into the water after her, but the current was too strong. He'd watched her sink, her eyes wide with shock, her hand reaching toward him before she disappeared into the dark. "I tried to find you," he shouted. "I tried." Emily's reflection smiled sadly. "You didn't try hard enough." The glass cracked, spiderwebbing across her face. "You left me alone down there." Then the mirror exploded outward, shards scattering across the room. Ryan shielded his face, feeling tiny cuts burn across his skin. When he looked up, the walls around him were dripping again, thick streams of dark water running down the wallpaper like veins. The ceiling above began to creak, and water poured through, pooling around his feet. He tried running for the door again, but it wouldn't open. The handle was slick, cold as ice. "Please, Emily," he screamed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you." The lights flickered on again, this time dim and blue, like moonlight underwater. The entire room looked submerged. Furniture floated, curtains swayed as if pushed by invisible waves. And in the center of it all, Emily stood, her hair floating weightlessly around her, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "You can't escape what you did," she said softly. "You have to come back with me." Ryan shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. "I'm alive, Emily. You're gone. Please, just let me go." Her expression softened, almost human again. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You never left." Ryan blinked. The floor gave way beneath him, and suddenly he was falling, back into cold, black water. He tried to scream, but the lake filled his mouth. Emily's hands reached out from below, pulling him deeper and deeper. As his vision blurred, he saw her face one last time, peaceful, almost loving. "Now," she said, "we can be together." Ryan's last breath left his lungs as the world went silent, swallowed by the lake's endless dark. Then, he woke again. Gasping. On the same wet floor. The same broken clock. The same dripping walls. It was 3 a.m. again. And this time, Emily was sitting beside him. Smiling. Ryan's scream tore through the silence as he scrambled backward, slipping on the wet floor. Emily sat calmly beside him, her pale face lit faintly by the flickering light overhead. Water dripped from her chin in slow, deliberate drops, pooling into the shape of a heart between them. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "You keep waking up," she said. "You keep trying to run. But you can't run from what you are." His breathing was ragged. "What I am," he gasped. "I'm alive, Emily." "You're dead," she finished for him, her smile widening unnaturally. "So are you, Ryan. You just haven't accepted it yet." He shook his head violently, heart pounding so hard it hurt. "No. I got out. I went back to the bridge. I told them what happened." Her eyes darkened, the faint glow in them turning to shadow. "You told them lies," she said, her voice rising now, echoing around the apartment. "You told them I slipped, that I fell. But you didn't tell them how you let go." Ryan felt a tear slide down his cheek. He could still feel the rain that night, the icy wind, her hand gripping his wrist as he tried to pull her up. He'd felt her nails dig into his skin, and then, for one terrifying second, he'd thought about his own safety. About saving himself. And he had let go. Emily's voice softened again, almost loving. "You think the lake forgot? You think I forgot?" He stood, backing toward the door, but his feet splashed in deeper water now, up to his ankles. "Please," he whispered. "I'll do anything. Just stop." The room began to distort again. The furniture drifted away, the ceiling melted into liquid shadows. The apartment dissolved until he stood once more at the bridge, the same night, the same storm raging. His clothes were soaked, his breath visible in the freezing air. Thunder rolled above. "Not again," he whispered. "Please, not again." Emily stood at the edge of the railing, her hair whipping in the wind. She turned slowly toward him, eyes filled with that same emptiness. "This is where it ends. Or begins," she said. Ryan stepped closer, tears mixing with the rain. "I can save you this time," he said desperately. "Please, just give me another chance." She smiled faintly. "You always say that." Suddenly, the bridge trembled, and the sound of rushing water below grew deafening. Emily reached out her hand toward him again. He grabbed it with both of his, holding tight. "I won't let go," he shouted over the storm. Her cold fingers tightened around his, and for a fleeting second, hope flickered in his chest. But then her eyes changed, black and bottomless. "You already did," she whispered. Her pull was violent, impossible. Ryan screamed as they both went over the railing, plunging into the freezing water below. He sank fast, darkness crushing him, her arms wrapping around his neck like chains. And then, he woke up. On the wet floor. 3 a.m. Emily sat beside him again, whispering, "You see now? We're stuck here. Forever." The clock ticked once. Then stopped. The water around them began to rise again.